Hi everyone here. So welcome to an amazing, stunning Monday. Yes, so today with our discussion and our Evoke business, we are excited, right? So today we are sitting by the greennesses of our seasons, right? At the window, and where we are at, we are wanting today to focus on that is us in the currentness of our seasons, right? Everyone wants to only look today at the green, but with the Vogue business, yes, we are excited to once again celebrate with you, together with the greenness of our view, the new season that started. Yes, we are excited. And yes, autumn is here. And it's a new month. It's the month of April, yes. And with saying that, with our HR 2023, we want to allow ourselves to listen once again to what we have to say in our season concerning our HR, our human resources restructuring, and our current requirement to be in the office and to be fine with where we are at in the office. With saying that, we also want to allow ourselves the opportunity to listen to what is it that we can do to have us be in a mental state that is fine for us with what is happening in our generation. It is that our generation has had the opportunity to learn once again that we are going through changes in our generation, but with going through the changes, we are required to abide to that. That is the restructuring that comes along with the changes that is happening in our generation. The restructuring that comes along with that so much is required concerning everyone in our generation, right? So much is required concerning having to make implement firm processes and to be firm about where we are at in our generation season, to have learned that our generation requires us to not only think about ourselves in the room, but to think about everyone else that might not be in the room, to make it to your home, yes, and to have yourself be fine with where you are at, with every requirement of difference that is happening in our generation. It is that we have learned that we cannot not agree with having to have that financial stability, right, with where we are at, with having to learn that for years our parents have worked and they were not even fine when they completed their work. They were exhausted out, and they didn't even, many people in South Africa did not have the proper time to be fine and to be at home before they were not there anymore, right? It was like a lot of people that worked, especially with my mom and them team at Paul Hospital. They were a team that when they were finished with work or when they retired, then they were exhausted out by the working hours, by that was sometimes required of them. And we have learned that in our generation we can affirm with that is going to have us be fine in our season, and that's going to not exhaust our generation out. It is that I have mentioned before that our office hours are 9 to 5, and it is 40 hours a week from a Monday to a Friday, and then you have the Saturday, the Sunday with family, right? So most of your day you spend at the office, and we want to focus today also on that. We said that we are focusing on our leadership, right? Where we had our leaders having to understand how are they required to be when they start a new role, right? When there's a new process implemented, where they are at with restructuring our generation. But with including this in our discussion, we want to have us understand our Monday to Friday working hours that requires our generation to understand that family is the office environment, but we also require that is our generation's time, that is those hours that we have worked 9 to 5 from a Monday till a Friday, where managers and leaders in our countries can work in a way that the working week becomes a Monday till a Thursday. A working week can become that that is not going to exhaust our generation, that is going to have the 40 hours in the week from a Monday till a Thursday, and then the Friday, the Saturday, and the Sunday would be family time, right? Would be that off time that we have with our families. And another thing that I want to mention today and that I want us to discuss thoroughly is the process of working hours calculated, right, in your daily pay. And when you calculate the working hours, you learn that there's a term in your in payroll, right, or in the HR process that says unpaid hours, right? And I want to really have our IRD when they're busy restructuring, because when we have the most basic functions properly and we have the most basic functions in place in our businesses, then and our systems are working effectively, then we do not need to still have unnecessary disagreements amongst business owners because of such simple functions that sometimes requires our generation to only apply that structure, that is, that when you mathematically think of the terminology unpaid hour, means that you are unpaid for an hour that you were not at the office, right? That is unaccounted for. We have mentioned that many times in human resources that an unaccounted hour is an hour that you were away from your workplace. And we have learned that in our tea breaks, there's the terminology that appears on our pay slips and on our payroll systems that is called an unpaid working hour. I have mentioned it last year, and I really want us to really listen to my explanation when it comes to the process of the payroll system. There is an electronic function that registers according to the working hours, and that exactly robotically will calculate that in accordance to the hours that you were at work at the office and accounted for in the hours away from the office. When we get those basic functions right and terminologies right, then the computerized function would then be able to process the information and the calculations accurately. Then there would be no hindrances that requires our generation to really listen to what is it that has gone wrong in our generation. Then it's simple terminologies, and then a terminology becomes that implementation that sometimes seems like an abuse, right? When you learn that there's already the 5 days at the office and the 2 days off. Now the terminology unpaid working hour to me sounds like manipulation and a computerized function, right? And when you try and hinder computerized function, then nowadays technology has become part of our daily lives. Technology is our everyday cell phone. Technology is our everyday television programs. We watch television on a daily basis. So technology is so much part of our generation's life that we need and that we are required to even get those simple terminologies right? So that there's a lot of restructuring in our generation, and it includes technology itself. It includes electronic functions, updating electronic processes thoroughly so that we are not disrupted when we come to that human communication with the electronic communication. Because remember, a cell phone is now not only a cell phone, right? A cell phone has become that communicates to the human being, and that communication then is electronically also, and therefore we need to have all of those processes in a way that it is non-abusive, and it is in a way that it is non-manipulative, so that we can really restructure and manage our generation in a way that our generation is at that season where, yes, people are driving Lamborghinis, yes, people are driving Bugatti cars, people are in technological functions that they even want to travel to the moon. And so all of those, when you learn of the process of how implementations of such functions should be, then it is in line with the human brain function, and therefore all of these technologies and the accuracy of it is of utmost importance, so that there's no hindrances with the communication that has become part of humanity. That humanity now says, before I hear the beep, I know my phone is going to beep. It is that communication line that we do not want hindrances on, and that we want the accuracy of the information with where it is required to be at. And therefore, I want us to really listen to my explanation on the unpaid, unaccounted for working hours. Remember, your Monday to Friday accounted for hours is every hour that we spend at the office environment. And I want to discuss this so that when we work the 40-hour week and when we are exhausted and when our generation are so much exhausted because we are required to work, because we are required to provide for our households, right? But we are required to also implement that is not gonna be over abusing humanity. And when we don't want to over abuse ourselves, we want to have people managing our offices and our businesses and our organizations and our generations most important business functions in a way that is non-abusive to our generation itself. And when we learn that we are going to require our office leaders to be younger, we learn that the elder people are in the office, right? But we're going to require the younger people that has got that ambition, that they have a lot that they still are aspired to do, right? And when you aspire to do something, you would do that is protective, right? It is not that the older you are, the more exhausted you are, but the younger you are, the more you would be investing in that. That is where our generation season is at, right? It is when everyone in our generation learn that we are in that mindset that we are building a generation of people. And while we are building, we are not excluding our elder people because their advice and their education is part of our generation and part of what we are implementing. And it's always going to be part of our generation. But we would also want to include our younger people in a way into our businesses and into our office environment in a way that it is going to be non-abusive and it won't deprive our people of where they are really required to be at. Yes, we are excited to have learned that my sister's oldest daughter, Shanice Marley, went to university. She's at her first year at university. Thank you, United Kingdom. We are always excited about it, yes. So she has gone to university, yes, and we are excited about that exactly. And we are also excited to have learned that the second-born Jadine is also going to university next year. So she's preparing this year to also go to university. And because they grew up in-house, right, they are now more outside. Shanice is now more outside and she's exploring a lot of different lifestyles and she's enjoying every part of just growing up and just being now that educated woman that she has always been, right? And she always just gave us the most amazing results, yes. And we're excited. Jadine also, yes. And Jadine is also excited to attend university next year. And we're saying that the children are deciding on where they want to be at in our generation, right? And they are deciding on what they want to do in our generation. Shanice has started a new job here. She hasn't been employed before, so she's now working at McDonald's while she's at university. And it's something totally different for Shanice because they've been in-house and the upbringing all these years has been in-house. And now they have that opportunity to once again be introduced to someone else in our generation rather than the people that they grew up with at school and that they attended school with. It is now the different point of view that we are at in our generation that we have to learn to allow our youth to listen to what is fine with them, with where they are at in education and with where they are at in what they want to implement and invest in our generation. So we are very excited, yes, for young ideas and for young opinion, right? Our youth's opinion that had them listen to our generation's voice, that are now the leaders in offices and that now have our youth now give their opinion based on what we have implemented in our office environment. So their opinion is going to be very firm, yes, very constructive, yes, and they're not always going to say what they say, but like always, there's many people that learns from where we are at in our seasons and that understand what others are saying. We're listening thoroughly. And we are excited for that, yes. So when it comes to the office hours and the business restructuring and where our generation are required to be at, we want our generation to listen to the terminologies of what it is that the payroll, that when it comes to a computerized function, right, it would exactly sometimes say what the requirement for the process should be. And when we listen to the terminologies, we will learn that there's lots of hindrance at most of the businesses when it comes to payroll issues, right? There's lots of system updates, and there's always that the computerized function doesn't always cooperate with the input of the information that we sometimes input, because the computerized function is accurately retrieving information. And when we input information and the information are retrieved and the information are then not accurate, there's a lot of communications in the universe in general that then would respond to that then would respond to a computerized function. I always say would not only be a robotic function, it would not only be a statue. Yeah, let me explain it in a statue way. So a computerized function would now not only be a statue. Why not? Because a statue is not having a brain, right? A statue is a piece of object that are being put together. But remember, the computerized function, any technology has got that is similar to the human brain function, and the communication is exactly that. And the part of the universe that communicates to that part of the brain function would be exactly the part of the universe that will speak the way that the human brain speaks, and that will function in the exact way that the human brain would function. And therefore, the accuracy of that information is when I tell you that a working week, and when it comes to humanity, exactly, and when it comes to the input of that information in the computerized function would report manipulation based on the human brain function of our generation, right? And when there's manipulation, there's that requirement to accurately update the information. I have mentioned this before in my house in 2021 of the requirement to accurately update information. It is not that someone is wanting to have other people maybe overwork, but we are required in our generation to update the information accurately, because we are not statues. No, the brain function of the human brain is the same communication line that is the technological communication in our generation. And therefore, the accuracy, the terminologies, listening to what the terminology is and exactly processing that is required, that is going to be cooperating with the technology, cooperating with the human brain function, because technology in the universe is exactly communicating to the human brain function in the universe, because the humanity are intertwining with that part of the universe. And therefore, the accuracy when it comes to updating those informations are of utmost importance, and we are required to listen to what is it that we need to correct in order for our generation to not be over implementing things, because they now have that information are gathered, and they get information, but then the information are not required to be implemented at this time or in such a way, right? It is always that we listen to what is it that the computerized function are communicating to us. We have had that I've mentioned, and I have said, where is my communication line? And people said, Rabia, what are you talking about? And some people really exactly knew what I'm talking about. But that communication line that comes from the other part of the universe, that communicates directly to the human brain, and that people on earth that has implemented all of these functions really exactly know what Rabia is talking about when I say my communication line cannot be at someone else's house, because I need to have my communication line for where I'm at in my season. It is that humanity has learned that all of these things are happening in our generation, and our generation is somewhat different. Yes, our parents didn't have the opportunity to get to know that these things are happening, and these things require us to respond differently. And we have that opportunity to now learn what is happening around us and how we can implement processes that is going to have everyone be fine, and that's going to have our human brain be non-aggressive. And especially when we look at the different countries in the season, we learn that there's much aggression. and we do not want the aggression on the human brain, and therefore we need all of these requirements and communications to be communicating accurately rather than hindrances of people that tries to manipulate. Some of the people have been familiar with these processes for years, and with our generation, that some of our people are now learning that these are the processes, but we are not going to be aggressive about it, but we are going to require the cooperation of everyone that works on the human brain function communication lines, and people that relays information to different countries and in different countries, that manages these informations, that has now learned that this is happening, and people that have been part of these processes for years, to not manipulate our generation and to not aggress our generation, but to accurately listen to what does the communication line requires you to do. And when you are familiar, I'm just gonna take this a bit down because I don't want it to blow over. When we are familiar with what is happening in our generation and with the human brain function, and with where the communication is at in our generation, and with the accurate requirement for the human brain to accurately communicate to the technological function, then we do not need people in offices that are still going to manipulate our generation any further. So I'm going to explain us through the process of our Monday to Friday working hours, our unpaid leave, and I want us to listen to my explanation rather than manipulating us around it, but listen to what I'm explaining and how I'm required to have this implemented in our payroll systems and processes, and in our employment technological systems. Yes, and we would want us to really allow ourselves to focus on that is gonna be non-manipulator for our generation. Yes, because our generation were manipulated a lot, and people were trying to manage processes that they thought in a way that would be fine, but now we've gotten to that is the aggressed part of our generation that requires us to mentally function fine, and therefore we are going to require all assistance when it comes to implementing and updating these processes in our countries. There's sometimes that people who work on these processes can't exactly explain what they are doing, but when they require information, they sometimes require our countries to not argue back so much, but to just allow themselves to understand the world in general and the requirement of why certain informations and the accuracy of that information are sometimes required in our generation. And when we have implementations like restructuring our generation, then we do not aggress ourselves about it. Then we allow ourselves to listen to what are the requirements when there's generational changes and generational processes that are changing. And when those changes happen, the system sometimes needs to be updated accurately. And we therefore allow ourselves to listen to what is it that we are required to provide. And we then exactly do that. That is sometimes going to be non-abusive, non-aggressive to our generation. And that is where we are at with restructuring and business restructuring in our generation. Yeah, so when it comes to our office working hours, right? I want us to focus on that. Let me have a good sunlight moment so that you can view better the video. I want to sit here today, right? So enjoy that also in the day. Yes, but what I want to say is why it is important that our processes and our technological functions are and have to be updated accurately is to work on the mental state of our generation. Remember, we had COVID-19, right? And with COVID-19, there's also been a lot of exhaustion, right? Our people at the office really are giving their best, right? I always say that really many times, and internationally, I've learned that office people are giving 100% in the offices. I can honestly not complain of anyone in New Zealand that sits in the office and that's busy with their own things, right? The New Zealand team of office people, they don't need a manager to still come and check up on them. They are so educated and they are so professional with what they do, and they are so accurate that when they work on their own pace, then you can so much see a generation that would not abuse one another, right? A a generation when an office manager don't have to overlook and don't have to be at office when someone is at the normal working day, and a manager doesn't have to come and check up on the person the whole time. Then you get that type of generation that RESTRUCTURING set in 2021 is prosperity, right? Prosperity is that there is a prosperous generation that is a blossoming. Yes, thank you for the greenness. There is a blossoming sunshine generation. And our New Zealand office team are exactly that team that managers don't have to look at what they are doing in the office, right? Managers don't have to check up on what they are busy with when they are doing their daily work. And they are sometimes on that is their own pace. That when they work on their own pace, you would really see the difference in the result in the office. They are not over oppressed by managers' requirement for them to just be in the office. But sometimes they require a bit of lenience, right? They are not over oppressed, and they would not argue a lot with sometimes that leniency that they require when it comes to office time, and when it comes to that our generation has themselves be physically, mentally fine and non-abused, that when a manager now learns that a person is now investing in what they're required to do in their daily job, then a manager shouldn't go and now manipulate or abuse the situation, right? It is that when you work with office people that are really providing and really fine with where they are at, then you work and you cooperate also with them being a man, with them being an employee in the office. I always say that we are all leaders in the office, and I've learned that exactly in New Zealand. We are all professional in what we do. We are all on our own pace. We all have our own mindsets, our own attitudes, our own reactions. We all are there because we are required to be there for our own reasons that has us be in that awoken season that we are at in our generation. And some of us can't still explain that. But when we have people advocating for that is protective for our office people, and the office people still doesn't have to go and argue concerning it, right? And still doesn't have to go and say that where I'm at, I don't have to say much, but the only thing I need sometimes is that lenience when I'm at the office, right? Because of that some people just want to work on their own pace, want to do things the way they really know and are experienced it, and that they still can't argue with an office manager. That's why a Vogue Business says with leading this generation, we are all leaders in where we are at in our season. And we all want to sometimes work on our own pace. And we all want to not be manipulated and abused when we are at work, and when we exactly know what we are required to do and why we are at where we are at in our season. It is that when ELISE came to the offices, I was not the inexperienced person. When I started work in New Zealand, I was not the inexperienced person. I was exactly the ELISE in the office that also had the same opinion that everyone in the office has, that I know where I'm at in my season. I know what's required of me, and I need my own pace to do that. And if allowed to do that, then people get 100% out of me, right? I have that same opinion. I educate in that same way, and therefore we need that is non-manipulative when it comes to being employees at the office. And therefore our normal working hours that vocabularize unpaid leave being an unpaid leave being calculated in your working hours from 9 to 5, right? So when your working hours is 9 to 5, accounted for hours means it is office hours that you have spent at the office environment, on the premises, on the business premises. And when I explain this terminology, I'm not going to explain a lot of things so that you'll focus only on what I'm saying with regards to the unpaid hours that are calculated in the payroll system. The unpaid hours terminology, the communication to the human brain, and the technical communication, technological function, that is the mathematical function of that, requires the input and the provision of information when it's mentioned being an unpaid hour in your 9 to 5 hours spent on the work premises. Remember, we input information that says that this is our office employees. We daily sign the accuracy of that. We have our people accounted for at the office on a daily basis from 9 to 5. And the unpaid terminology is a hindrance in that function, because if we do the census at home that then updates and that then have information being updated on our systems and on our computerized functions that now says these are your unemployed people and they are not at the offices. And during this working hour and this working week, they are your people that between those times would normally be at house. These are your people that during these times would find themselves in the office environment, in the businesses. These are your unemployed people that would require you to attend to their requirements that comes to our generation, not be 50% poverty and 50% provision provided for, but our generation that are then restructured in a way that is going to be firm and protective, that there's provision made for everyone accounted for in our generation. And therefore, the accuracy of those informations when it comes to our payroll system is of utmost importance. And I'm not going to want to explain a lot because I can explain a lot because I am very experienced with what I do, but I'm going to explain the simplest function, and that is that when our payroll leaders and payroll managers and our advocates in this, when they discuss this matter, they thoroughly reason the way that they look at our generation in general and the changes that are happening in our generation, and they thoroughly listen to what is it that RESTRUCTURING are trying to explain to us, that we need to sometimes require ourselves to listen so that we do not, so that it does not seem that we are aggressing our generation more and oppressing our generation more, because remember, we are dealing with an aggressive generation that everyone is arguing about the poverty state of our generation. Everyone is running out about the mental state of our generation, about protecting humanity in general, about that is going to be fine for everyone. And when our leaders listens and discuss this discussion, these are the simplest processes that we need to get correct, that would have us, that communication line, be non-hindrance when there's other processes that we are busy correcting and restructuring in our generation, and that other countries are busy working with in our generation. And therefore, your 9 to 5 hours can never be unaccounted for, because those unpaid, the terminology unpaid means that there's unaccounted hours that you have not spent at the office. Remember, unpaid means that it is unaccounted for hours. Unaccounted for means not you were away from your office desk. No, unaccounted for terminologically means that you were away from your office desk and you were not at the office and at the premises, because your counted for hours is your clocked in hours and your clocked out hours, and you cannot require the system to go and calculate that the person has now left the business premises and the person is now at an unpaid tea break, right? So that terminology of unpaid tea break, the calculation of that calculates the 40 hours that has a generation that be so exhausted from a Monday till a Friday, but that calculates exactly the hours necessary from a Monday till a Thursday, and maybe early on a Friday morning office hours, and then the whole Friday, half of the Friday, Saturday and Sunday is that is not having us mentally, because when we listen to it, when the human brain listens to that function, the human brain says that's exactly sometimes manipulation when it's being explained and inputted in a way that it explains it as an unpaid, but no one has left the office, because an unpaid is only unaccounted for hours, and unaccounted for hours are only hours that you have not spent at the work premises. Unaccounted for hours are only hours that were not spent at the work premises. The unpaid in that day means that you have either left the premises and you are not at the work premises, because if the unpaid hours meant that you have left your office desk, and the terminology technologically will have to calculate that you started at 9 a.m. but you finished work at 5 p.m. and you left the office for half an hour or for 15 minutes, right? Those manipulations in the communication functions can sometimes be corrected because no hours accounted for is your 9 till your 5 p.m. hours. If you leave the office for more than 1 hour in a day, then it can be calculated as an unpaid, because then you might have left the premises, because then the calculation of that and the technological function of the computer would then not have it seems like manipulation, right? So remember, the computerized function also knows about manipulation, because they communicate, I've mentioned just now, exactly the way the human brain functions communicates, and they are exactly the same communication line. So the terminology that calls itself an unpaid, that is for 15 minutes, seems like manipulation, because it is not unaccounted for 15 hours. It is 15 hours that you went to go and spend the tea break for, 15 hours that you went to go and spend an afternoon tea break for, and the only unaccounted for hours that can be calculated on a computerized function, and that would not cause so much communication barriers, would be more than 1 hour that you might have left the office, that is unaccounted for unpaid hours. Unpaid means you have left the premises and you are not at your work premises. That is what unpaid hours means. Unpaid hours you can calculate in when someone left the office for 15 minutes and you want accuracy of that, and you want to calculate it, then you calculate it exactly either at the start of your shift or by the end of your shift, right? You calculate it exactly where you either left the workplace at an early state, or you left the workplace maybe at the early state or at a later state, right? And that terminology is that accuracy that we sometimes require, because the same way I get confused when I say it is the same way the computerized function is a human brain, and when it's explained thoroughly, then it would have the process the information accurately when it comes to the mental state of our generation, when it comes to the overworking hours, when it comes to Monday to Friday the work, and Saturday and Sunday at your house, and away from the work premises, then that calculation would then be accurate. And therefore, remember the terminology. There can be no terminology of an unpaid working hour calculated in accounted for office hours. I'm going to say that again. There can be no unpaid terminology on a computerized system inputted in accounted for office hours unless someone left the office for more than 1 hour, unless they left the work premises for more than 1 hour. Why? Because the computerized function, that is the computer system that processes the information, exactly reasons the way the human brain reasons. Why? Also because humanity works a 9 to 5 working hour that are accounted for at the office premises. Why? Also because when people are updating census information and updating unemployment records, there's exactly those informations of people that are accounted at the office environment and people that are counted at the houses at non-office environments during any working week, right? The accuracy of this information. Why else? Because the accounted for hours is 9 till 5 from a Monday till a Friday, and humanity only has a Saturday and a Sunday off, meaning that humanity are sometimes exhausted and they need to accurately provide hours that is gonna have humanity have more hours spent away from the office than they have at the office. And the accuracy of that, if a generation gets that right, then that generation is honestly the 100-year generation without any doubt, right? If a generation can accurately implement these processes correctly and learn their terminologies based on how you would explain it, based on how you would educate the generation to 100 years, then you would exactly start with what is exhausting your generation more, with what is it that they invest more time in that they should have had themselves be physically, mentally, and where they are at fine in what they are required to be in this season. physically, mentally, your reactively, every reaction. Yes, reactively means you do not now want humanity to say that they are now robots because of the amount of hours that they input, but reactively they would be reacting in that is going to be protective for one another, because none of them would feel abused with where they are at. I also want to mention 9 to 5, remember, accounted for office hours. And unpaid terminology just confuses the computerized function. An unpaid tea break and an unpaid lunch break adjust has the computerized function, the brain function that hinders the computerized brain function. Unaccounted for office hours is you spend the day at the office and you spend the day at the office premises, including at the office. Unpaid means you spend the day away and you were therefore unpaid because you may be left it for a leave, or you may be left to the office for an uncertain reason. And unpaid, you always calculate that when someone leaves the office, it would either be more than 1 hour that you leave the office premises that it is an unpaid, right? And if there's an other unpaid in your office hours that are unaccounted for, then it would be accounted or either by the time that you have started your workday or by the time that you end your workday is where you calculate the unpaid working hours at. And another thing that we want to say about that is that when you calculate a working week, Monday till a Thursday, and you have the unpaid terminology out of the equation, and every hour from 9 till 5 is accounted for hours, then you work it out in accordance to how the generation can have the Friday off, right? So you would then say 8:30 till 5:30. A working week from a Monday till a Thursday, that would then be your 40 hours working week, and a Friday, a Saturday, and a Sunday would be an off day for our generation to be mentally fine, for our 100-year generation, and for the restructuring that is happening. Yes, the accuracy of information in our generation is of utmost importance. So everyone who's updating information, census updates, yes, people are updating processes in our countries. Yes, people came to my door the other day and they said, Rabia, now it's your time. You gave us all of that explanation in people of color. And I said, that is amazing. And Dorian is going to manage that process for us. And yeah, so the accuracy of providing that information is very important so that we can work on the mental state of our generation. People are working on it and they have informed us that they are working on these processes. And we believe that every country are working on these processes and are having the accuracy of updating the information, discussing these matters that are mentally challenged to our generation, discussing the 100-year generation, the office environment included in that, because I want to discuss our 100-year generation with us also in our HR23 discussion, because that's what HR23 is exactly about, right? It is exactly about our generation's 100 years of not being overtired, not being mentally abused, not being manipulated, not being drained out, not being exhausted, but being where they are required to be and well looked after with where they're required to be at in this season. I've decided to not go and apply for jobs yet because I'm still very busy working on educating on where I'm at with Evoke Business and with what I am educating in my season concerning my employment years that I have had and what I've learned about human resources in general and those processes that can be corrected in our generation. And with saying that, I'm also very excited to hear that our generation's 100 years, they want to transit in really in allowing one another to rather have our sports games rather than arguing. That's very good, yes, mentally, physically, that's very fine for our generation. But we also have to look at the unemployment rate in our generation, yes. We also have to look at that there's a generation going on with painting the color that they say, let's rather have sports than arguing about all of these issues. But there's that generation that says that while we have sports, while we do not argue about these issues, let us rather than allow ourselves to focus on how can we provide more office environment, more work, more businesses for business provision for our unemployed people, right? And we want people to really focus on not being aggressed with with implementing these processes, because many people feel abused because they now have to allow other people to also be employed and to also be where they're required to be, and we don't want anyone to feel abused because of it. But what we want to say is that while our generation is restructuring, and while there's the restructuring taking place in our countries, it is provision for businesses that is going to look after the unemployed people. And that's where Business About is at in my season. It is what can I do with having to make sure that someone can be employed, right? Whether they are employed through my business or whether I am advocating them to have employment with where they are required to be at, whether I'm speaking to our business leaders in our generation and they are constantly listening to the advice and opinion given, and they are therefore have really proven that they're implementing that is our opinions also in where they are at financially. And with that, we want to say, when you really learn that people are cooperating in our generation and they are not aggressed, then people in our communities do not have to be aggressed to our business owners because of the financial requirement that has to be that has our generation be financially well. The way our generation has to be the 100% financially well generation. And we really want people to not be aggressed when they want to voice about that, right? Aggressed means RESTRUCTURING speaks and advocates, but someone else runs out aggressive about it, and we do not want that. When you listen to my opinion, you listen to what is going to be non-abusive to our generation also, so that we do not give 100% and someone else runs with another manipulation of it or another abuse of someone, right? We want to really have these processes managed in a way that is protective for everyone. I always say that when I am your wife and you are the billionaire and you do all of these wrong things in the world and you are really in that lifestyle and you really, really, really have me as your wife, I would not now be fine with all of those things. There would be those mornings that I wake up that you will hear me saying it, that I will tune in, I will say what I want to say, because that is our generation. We care for everyone and we are kind with everyone. Yes, we love everyone, but honestly, there's certain things that honestly, you cannot go about around me with abusing people, because this will be, ELISE will be very loud about it, and I will say it the way that I am meant to say it. Yeah, so that's it for HR23. I want us to only focus on that and to only discuss that matter and to only discuss the communication and the restructuring and the provision of accurate information when we are updating these informations. I do not want us to, I'm going to probably next Monday, because I wanted to discuss mental wellness with us the month of March, but I'm going to discuss it in April because I want us to focus on the mental wellness calculation, right? I did that calculation and I've really copied it on a piece of paper, and it's really, really interesting, and I will explain it in the way that I have really, really, really updated it on a piece of paper and what it means to me, right? The 9.5% of our generation, the 10% of our generation, the mental wellness state of that, the 7.5% of our generation that then has, it's a lot. I did the calculation so accurately because it's mentally not over be, not under be, but allow yourself to be in the accuracy of 50% mentally, 50% physically, reactively, the 100% calculation that when it goes to 150, you understand the 100% generation that are being managed in a way that is fine and that is protective for everyone. And that's what we want to focus on. Why we are focused on our office team this week with this discussion is because when our office team manages a lot of these processes, and when they input this information, then they really learn that we are not saying it in an abused way. We are sometimes just going to be RESTRUCTURING ELISE when we give our advice and our opinion based on what we have learned in the office environment, right? And when we give that opinion and we require accurate update on that we have learned that when we were employed in the office, there's all of these that we can correct in the office environment, then we don't want any of the office people to feel that the opinion is now personalized, because it's definitely not personalized. But we do not also want our people that are unemployed to get a grace while the information being updated and while the office people works on all of these processes, and while we are trying to implement businesses and workplaces that will provide for everyone in our generation that are required to be provided for. There's a lot that our countries can do, and there's a lot that I'm going to probably explain us through the census updates, because I want us to accurately also do that, right? Why? Because I want us to not manipulate what I've explained just now. And when you listen thoroughly through the discussions that I have, and that's why I sometimes say 100,000 words in 1 minute, because I want people who listen to me, listen to everything that I say, because I never leave out the information that when people are employed and they implement these processes of what I educate in my discussions and what a Vogue business educates, then I do not want information and hindrances, because if Rabia explains it, and if Rabia exactly work on the process, then Rabia will exactly know what she's explaining and what is needed to be updated. But when someone else now doesn't want to work with a Vogue business, and they don't want to call Rabia into the office to come and explain them through this, they don't want to have the discussion because they want to have it be their team that updates this information, then I'm sometimes gonna be firm about the hindrance of the communication. Because remember, I'm educating the information. People need to contact our businesses so that when we work on these processes, they exactly know what they're needed to do with the census updates, what they're required to do with the accuracy of payroll functions, what they're required to do when they learn that this is the office environment, when they sit in these meetings with leaders that leads our mental state of our office environment, with the mental wellness teams of our office, the health and safety office team members and leaders in our generation, then they accurately listen to, and they accurately sometimes are required to be in contact with us so that they do not cause any aggression, right? Because when I provide the information for you the way that I'm explaining it, then there would be no hindrances based on what you are required to do. And therefore it's easy for people to say that they want to listen to a Vogue video, and many of the Facebook and Instagram team leaders download the video for business and for leaders. But I don't want y'all to download the video. I want y'all to educate leaders to communicate to businesses like a Vogue business that educate you based on processes that you learn that is so important and that is explained so accurately that it couldn't have been explained from someone else, right? And therefore those manipulations in our generation, that when people hear a Vogue speak and they want to go and implement the process, then sometimes there's information that is blocking out that accuracy of when Rabia ELISE explains it to you what you are required to do. Then you would not have that is aggression in our generation. Then you would not have that when you work on the process and you exactly work from a Vogue business, then why would you then not contact a Vogue business and directly work with a that's part of the business restructuring in our generation, that when I explain us through the census update of information, I want to explain us thoroughly through it, but I want to have people listen to when they are running to someone else with what the details is that they have downloaded. No one can see when people download information from Facebook. No, only Facebook business owners exactly know who downloaded information, what business managers, where was the information emailed to. Facebook business owners exactly know businesses that work with our information, and therefore they should also educate that contact people who can explain to you what they are speaking about, and where y'all are also voicing the same voice in the same season, then have the accuracy of that in our generation also. That is the accuracy of where we are required to be at with business restructuring, human resources 2023. Business resources and Rabia ELISE. Don't manipulate the information. Don't go give it to your daughter and your family line. Don't go give it to anyone else. When Rabia ELISE has explained it to you, Rabia ELISE would exactly know how it should be implemented. And therefore, manipulation in business restructuring and in our generation is not allowed. And that is why Rabia is not at the office today and explaining it from the comfort of a very household, because she's at that and that our generation have had the COVID-19 And the mental state of it has not even been implemented in businesses. I have learned that no businesses has really worked on the mental wellness of our generation before they require people to be back at the office. The mental wellness of our generation is educated in the offices what foods are required to what foods people are required to have, your office working hours that is now going to have you also be fine with where you're required to be at, that communication in the offices, all the health and safety and the wellness that you educate in your office environment was of utmost importance when people started to work at the offices. Yes, some offices have big screen televisions. What they can do is on those televisions, you can add a vote discussion, and then whoever wants to listen to it listens to it on that day. What you can also do is you can educate and the meal plans for people who sit on a computer on a daily basis. How much cups of coffee you educated, you have it on your television screen. You do not have television in a canteen area to just have a television screen. No, you have television screens on the canteen area so that RESTRUCTURING ELISE can be on that screen, and so that you can put the people of color discussion on, and people who listen, they can change the channel regularly, and they can say that this week we want to listen to that discussion. And that is also what you can include in your management meetings. That is the accuracy of that. The accuracy of well generation are required to be added, and how we can educate that is protective in our office environment. It is people came out of a mental state that's called COVID-19. People had that they are required to eat well. They're required to have regular fluids. They are required to not be aggressed or to be made aggressed in the office, and the office working hours, they are required to not exhaust them while they're at the office and while they came from such a challenging season. Another thing is the meals that they can eat is that while they are working on computers, and many office people are working on computers from 9 till 5:30, and some office people even eat their lunch breaks, and you can't tell them anything else. They want to have that lunch break at the office desk, and therefore what type of green meals, your vegetations, you would need to eat, especially when your hours is so exhausting, and your regular water breaks. Tea break is of utmost importance. A very good tea. Green teas exhaust your human body. So honestly, you would get very exhausted when you drink a green tea because it really drains your immune system. And a normal red bush tea, a normal English breakfast tea, a tea that is soft, yes, you can have that. And then also not a lot of coffee during your working hour, because you do not want to be robotic, and you do not on a Friday want to be so aggressive that the Monday that you start, then you are aggressive with the whole office because you couldn't even enjoy your weekend, right? It is those accuracies of details and those accuracies of restructuring our offices that we do not want to say again, and we do not want to argue about it, and we do not want to say we don't want to look at RESTRUCTURING video because the light is not right. We say that we listen to every word RESTRUCTURING says, we discuss it in our meetings, and we try and have our office people be fine, be protective with where they are at, be not abused, be not aggressed, and be educated on how to be mentally well when they are working such exhausting hours, a Monday till a Friday, and only a Saturday and a Sunday. Even only thinking about that already makes us tired. So yeah, let's get all of that information right in our generation to be the 100-year generation that we are. That is it for today, yes. We are going to have an amazing month of April. We are going to have a mental wellness discussion. We are going to have to talk about a lot of things, and such women of color is also coming up. Very exciting. Yes, we educate, and we educate. We give our opinion to where we can, and we allow ourselves and our people in our generation to be fine with where they're at. And that's it for today with RESTRUCTURING ELISE. Have an amazing work week further.